What are the key attributes of a cricketer from a cricket island's point of view?
We look at an athlete and when we're identifying players, we obviously look across all disciplines and say, what strengths a player has. But I think there's much deeper things than saying this guy scores lots of runs, he gets lots of wickets, he hits the ball hard. Excuse me. And the deeper things are more about attitude, about aptitude, about a player's commitment. And the thing that has struck me, having been involved here for about a year and a half now, and I suppose looking in from the outside probably for the last 15 years, is there's almost a DNA, I think, within Irish sportsmen of a will to fight, a will to hit above the bar, to stretch themselves, to never lay down, saying we've lost this game. There's a constant battle and a fight to believe in themselves and rise above that. And I think you can see that in rugby. We have a massive sporting Gaelic games here, hurling and Gaelic football. People who will absolutely run through a brick wall for you, run over a cliff, will go the absolute optimum about their physical potential possibilities to give it everything. And I think the Irish cricket team over the years, back to 2005 when they won qualifiers in South Africa, got to the World Cup in 2007, beat Pakistan, beat Bangladesh, not Pakistan out of the World Cup. There's an inherent culture within those players, and whether it's in their DNA, whether it's something that's societal, I'm still learning, but I think that is something that can be affected, and it's about a culture, and a country that perhaps doesn't have that self-belief and really tries to punch above its weight, that there can be things done, there can be an element to that that's learned, I think, that a player needs to commit fully, needs to be able to go the extra yard and never lays down in defeat, always fights to the bitter end. And if any player or any team can turn around and say, I fought right to the bitter end and I've given it my all, then if they've been beaten by a better side on the day. And I think that's the inherent culture that we try and keep pushing in our Irish teams all the way through, from age groups. There's obviously lots of other attributes that are really important. I said commitment at the beginning. I think that if anyone's going to succeed in anything, they have to be committed. They have to have a will to want to get better, want to learn, and they have to be very clear and understand what it takes to get there. So the more we can do to make younger players understand these are the attributes you need, these are the areas that you'll need to develop and work on in order to be that successful, because it doesn't come through raw talent. Unfortunately, it just doesn't come through raw talent, and we've got some very talented young people here, but they have to fight for their place in any team.
Why is it important to have a clear player pathway?
I think the most important reason for that is for players to understand what the opportunities are along the pathway, how they can be supported, and ultimately looking at their goals, their long-term goals, their short-term goals. What are they aspiring to be in terms of this sport? So if here in Ireland they want to play international cricket on the world stage, what's my route to doing that? And I think it's really important to be absolutely crystal clear, very transparent on understanding what are the small steps that I need to take in order to be the person that perhaps they aspire to be in terms of a role model. I think there's another area that's really important, is that around any player there's a number of people that have a big influence in their lives. A network of friends, family, coaches teachers, other sports coaches, and to make sure that the people around them are aware of what are those small goals and how do we achieve making the Irish under-13 team or under-15 team. My first outing into cricket, it might be playing for a club under-11 side. What do I aspire to do next? It's making the inter-provincial side. If I do that, could I get into the Ireland under-15 side? Could I get in the Irish Academy? How do I become an Irish international? And it's not going from club cricket to international cricket as it used to be here and in a lot of other of our member countries. It's actually a much greater pathway. And we really need to make sure that the players, athletes, understand that fully.
What makes a good performance programme?
A good or a great performance programme?
Let's start with good, and then what's your aspirations to make it a great performance programme?
Yeah. I think what's really important for any player, whatever environment they're in, is the support around them. And I think that support quite often is tempered by financial resource, human resource, expertise around. I suppose for any country, for any player that's aspiring to get to a certain level, what are the key ingredients to that success? How do they become the best they can be? And I think that's having good coaches who really get to understand a player, to have good support networks of staff around, not necessarily staff, but people who understand the other disciplines and facets of the game. So in a player's development, it's not just about technical. We know there's a physical element to it that's very important. For the rigours of playing much more intense amounts of cricket, there needs to be an S&C programme, strength and conditioning programme. There needs to be elements of the physical makeup of that player that are going to sustain them and help them be successful. There's a mental side to the game which can be educated along the way, but as they reach higher echelons of the game, that becomes a key focus. The mind is a massive strength if they're going to be successful in the long term. There's a whole lifestyle around a player, and I think in certain countries where the game has a huge culture, like our full member countries, the culture of the game is prevalent, and they can get too much of a good thing. And to have a 12-month programme of constant cricket, perhaps if you're quite successful for 4, 5, 6 years, actually you become very stale. Have you got the appetite to want to do it every day? So I think a programme that's very carefully monitored around the player's lifestyle, making sure they have time for friends and family, making sure they have time for other sports, if they so wish, that they have other interests, that their schoolwork is important, that they succeed in that and that they do well. It's a balance, isn't it? A careful balance. But it's having the right people around that programme to make those balances all work up. I quite often talk about a jar with 5 rocks in it, different sizes. What's the biggest rock? How big a focus is that in that person's life, and is that a priority? And what are the other rocks within that jar? And how big a priority are them? And then around that jar of rocks, can you fill the jar any fuller? And you can. You can fill it with gravel to fill in some of the holes. What's the gravel? What are the bits of that person's life that they can also fit in and are important to them? And is the jar still full? Maybe, but actually if you pour sand into it, it fills a few more gaps. And what's the sand in somebody's life there? Can they fit in a bit more time for this and that? And is the jar still full? Looks it, but actually if you pour water in, it then really fills it up. So there's a lot of key ingredients to a lifestyle, and I think the key about a really good performance programme is having a balance between those areas, and therefore being able to get the best out of that individual player. And it's not just, we're in a fortunate position in Ireland now where we have more resource and expertise to help a player do that, but I think that can often be used as an excuse. There are others around who have different areas of expertise, whether that's in business, whether that's as a parent, whether that's as a teacher, or whatever aspect of their life. it's actually using those people in the right way to help that player along their pathway.
Why is it important to keep developing coaches within a performance programme?
I think any person in any facet of life, whether it be work, whether it be sport, and whether it be other interests, need to keep developing to be better themselves. And a coach is there to support a player and help them understand more about themselves. And that coach, therefore, needs to keep developing themselves just as a player is developing themselves. And I think there's a danger quite often in any area, aspect of life, that one feels, look, I've done a lot of education, learning about this particular thing, in this case coaching. You never stop learning. I think we all know as coaches you never stop learning. You always pick something up, whether you pick it up from your own experiences and learning from your own mistakes or your own strengths, or whether it's watching somebody else and nicking ideas and things from them. But I think the key thing about a player is that if you're trying to key thing about a coach is you're trying to develop a player, you should be constantly challenged, and that challenge will continue. Unless you develop yourself at the same rate or at a faster rate, you're not going to keep up with that player. The danger then is to try and develop that player when actually you haven't got the skills or the ability to do it. And there are some coaches out there who are very, very good at noticing where that level is and then passing them on to hopefully somebody who has got those skills and ability. So I think coach, whatever level they're working at, to keep challenging yourself to learn more and understand more, you're going to be able to fulfill that player with so much more support, and hopefully they're going to get better with it. I think the other thing about coaching is that most coaches do it because they love it. They enjoy the sport, they enjoy the fact that they enjoy the facets around coaching. And if you can be better at what you're doing, surely you're going to get more out of it. So I think there's never a halt in anyone's coaching career to stop developing.
What are you looking to achieve for the future for your performance programme?
One of the key areas that's critical for us, and that we're in a fortunate position, we're a high performance country within ICC. We're playing full members now on a fairly regular basis. The thing that's absolutely critical is that we need to prepare players for the international stage. And we had a couple of players back in 2009, 2010, 17 years of age. There was a judgment call on their ability, which clearly was a good call. I'm talking about George Dockrell, Paul Sterling. And they had immense talent, immense ability, but they'd, in some cases, never played outside of Europe. And we've had a number of players who their first trip outside Europe has been an Under-19 World Cup in New Zealand, in India, Asia, wherever it may be. One of the key things of the programme that we're working on now, we have a plan to 2019 to the World Cup in England, and across along that pathway there's a number of things. But if you look at a 13, 14-year-old now who may be playing in that World Cup age 20 in 6-7 years' time, what is it they need between now and then to prepare them as best as we possibly can for the rigours of a World Cup? And along the way, hopefully they would have played, one-day internationals, 2020 internationals. They need to have a world education within the game. What do I mean by that? They need to have played in different climates, different cultures, different surfaces, difficult surfaces, challenging situations. Westernised countries, very easy to tour, very much feel at home. So taking them out of the comfort zone and putting them into some quite difficult situations and seeing how they cope and giving them an education with that. That's critical, and that's a key focus of our player development over the next 7-8 years. We need to make sure that we're giving those players the best support possible. So George Dockrell went and played age 17-18 in the World 2020 in the West Indies, where Ireland nearly knocked England out of that tournament but for rain. Playing in a stadium, 30,000 people, left arm spinner, never been in a situation, never played in front of 1,000 people, let alone 30,000 people. Talent, yes. Ability, yes. Judgment call on can he cope with it, yes. Selectors picked him, he played. Playing against the England team in the West Indies, World 2020. Left arm spinner, control of the ball getting a bit stuck, sweaty palms, massive pressure. There could have been a lot of things that could have gone wrong. And there was a good judgment call by our head coach, Phil Simmons, and others and the selectors. And he's got a very calm head on his shoulders and was able to cope with it. I think we have to be very careful that we need to make sure that players understand a huge amount about themselves when they get to that stage. If we're likely to pick a 17, 18, 19-year-old to play international cricket, that all the way along the way they've started to coach themselves because of the skill of our coaches and the way they're working with the player. That player knows an awful lot about themselves. They have a huge amount of self-belief. But we can support them then in the areas that they really need support to prepare them for the international stage. It's no good, perhaps what we may have been looking at 10 years ago, whereby we stick a player in because we know he scores runs, we know he's talented, but actually we don't know whether he's going to crack on the world stage. Playing against the world's best, bowling against Sachin Tendulkar as a 17-year-old. That's massive. When you haven't come through a full member country perhaps and had first-class cricket behind you at that young age, even if it's a small amount of first-class cricket, you know, you've had a professional environment. When you come out of effectively club cricket, you know, the two are of a massive extreme, playing club cricket, playing international cricket. So our programme is very much focusing on the individual, very much focusing on giving them all the support networks, and I'm talking about all the sports science medicine background. I'm talking about a huge amount of understanding about themselves as a character, and making sure that they can start to coach themselves, that they can default to the basics, world-class basics that Andy Flower talks about, that we know we can go back to that and they can still be successful. But we have to challenge them massively, not just here but all around the world, to be better, understand more about the world's game, and then hopefully when they make the step up, they're ready for it.